South Africa clinched a vital win against Afghanistan, chasing down 245 runs with 5 wickets to spare in the World Cup 23. Razivander Duzen, I still can't pronounce his name, was unbeaten at 76, guided the team victory. Afghanistan posted 244 runs earlier with Azmatullah Omarzai scoring an unbeaten 97. Well, that was the highlight of the day. Coetzee took 4 wickets. He was apparently back after Shamsi's they're kind of doing musical chairs with each other. But today, Australia faces Bangladesh in Pune. The match is currently on, with Australia eyeing the semi-finals in the second match. England challenges Pakistan at Eden Gardens at Kolkata, despite being out of the semi-final race. England holds historical advantage. Yes, the underlined word is historical advantage, and if it means anything, David Brooks will be very pleased and happy, who's present on the show. Advantage over Pakistan in the ODIs. The first Australia-Bangladesh match was in 1990 and the last one was 2019. England and Pakistan first met in 1974, with the last encounter being in 2021. Well, we have an Aussie, Mr. Paul Dillett, the well-known, acclaimed, well-spoken, sharp, blunt Aussie who joins us from Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, wherever he travels to. And we have David Brooks from London. But before we get on to that, I've got Tasmin Granger, the lady who's played for 15 years. Tasmin, quickly tell us, what is the score? And we'll take one more interesting story of the day.
Currently, good morning to you all. Bangladesh this morning lost the toss and Australia chose to have a ball at them first up. Surprising, knowing that Bangladesh, there's not really much that can happen, inconsequential match in terms of the log. They're currently 92 for the loss of 1, and they've been doing pretty well, scoring 64 in their first power play without a loss of a wicket. The loss of the wicket just coming in the past 3 overs that have just gone by.
Well, that's an interesting part. Can you also tell us the lineup?
Oh yes, definitely. Not much has changed in their 2 squads. Right now you have on the Australia bench David Warner, Travis Head most probably looking to open the batting for them. Steve Smith is back into the squad today, having recovered from vertigo, apparently.
Well, what is the story about vertigo? I think it will... Paul, what is the vertigo story doing rounds, which makes David very happy?
Well, I think it's just that Steve Smith was genuinely ill, and the very hot conditions might have played a part, but he was physically sick in the warm-ups to the previous games, and was unable to take his spot at the side. He's back now, so I don't think there's anything around anything other than it was a genuine illness, and he's now recovered.
Well, absolutely. Nice. I think Australia has a knack of getting unfit player, and when they're back in the team, Australia is delighted. Don't you agree?
Well, it's going to be interesting because Smith and Labuschagne and Marcus Stoinis are kind of competing for 3 going into 2 spots. And I think that at the current state of play is Smith, because of his reputation, is probably assured of a spot. But there's been some talk around that should he be ahead of Labuschagne? And what about Marcus Stoinis? Because Australia's got a choice to make coming to the semi-final. Are we going to go full-out gung-ho aggressive and assume that we're going to have to try to get about 380 against South Africa? Or are we going to say, no, in these big matches, sometimes you need the sort of test quality. Let's keep Labuschagne and Smith together and relegate Stoinis to the bench. Today's game may have some impact on that.
Well, absolutely. Today's game definitely has an impact. Well, David Brooks, what do we have here from London early morning? What do we have for the match?
Well, this match is obviously has something riding on it for Bangladesh. They've got a Champions Trophy place to play for. They made a good start today. You just thought maybe Australia would have wanted to take first knock, but maybe they're having a practice at chasing. I don't know, but more on it for Bangladesh than Australia. And as you say, some interesting selection decisions for Australia. Glenn Maxwell, the hero of the last match, not playing today. I imagine he's having a rest, unless he's been back on the golf course. And good to see Steve Smith back. I must admit, I've vomited before a few matches before, usually because I don't fancy playing against the opposition. I'm sure that's not the case in Steve Smith's case, but he's fighting for his place. So it'd be interesting to see whether Smith, Labuschagne, Stoinis, which one of them takes advantage of this opportunity today.
Well, that's an interesting point you made. Well, let me move on to Paul again. Paul, what we see statistically that the numbers of matches, I mean, 320, 350 has become a par score. Would you agree to that phenomena and understanding of this?
Yeah, but I think that probably masks a fair degree of variability depending on the pitch. That's something that is going to be very important for every team in the semi-final and the final to be able to quickly come to an assessment of the pitch and work out, is it something where 320 or 280 even will be a highly competitive score, as Afghanistan did in the game that Glenn Maxwell ultimately won it for Australia. But I think Afghanistan had sensibly realised it wasn't the sort of pitch they needed to strive for 400. But then on the flip side, you don't want to go the other way and assume that the pitch is not as good as it actually is. Come out there, score 350 and then get it chased down and realise that you didn't go hard enough. So a fair degree of judgment is actually needed.
Well, that's an interesting point. Tasmin, what is the latest that we have so that we can talk to our colleagues there in London as well as in Australia? Yeah.
Currently, Bangladesh are on 99, still for the loss of 1. They're hoping to just cross over the 100 mark. They still have Linton Das at the crease along with Najmul Shanto right now. And I'm expecting something big from him today. You know, he's been having starts and not much of going across the line, the 50 line, and probably going through it completely. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with that today. They had an opening stand of 76 runs and they're currently reconstructing their innings again.
Absolutely. Reconstruction of the inning is equally important. Well, interesting point, the news that is coming in from Bangladesh. And Paul, I would like to take your view. Alan Donald has decided, after his comment against that Shakibul Hassan's behavior on field, he's decided not to renew his contract after the World Cup. Is it something that, I mean, just explain the situation from a coach's and a great bowler's point of view, and then I'll put in David Brooks on his views.
Well, I suppose if you're going to go out, you might as well, you've got a freedom to speak your mind. I think that the interesting thing going forward for Bangladesh is that they've been probably eclipsed definitely by Afghanistan. That there's a feeling that Bangladesh eventually would take their place as a really sort of senior member of the cricketing top class nations. That kind of hasn't happened. They've had some good results and they've flattered to deceive, but you would say right now that Afghanistan, any side that's coming up against them regards them as kind of the equivalent of any other side, much like Sri Lanka did. I remember in the early 1980s when Sri Lanka and the West Indies were coming up, they did an advertising campaign and they didn't even feature a single second of footage of Sri Lanka. The entire ad was Australia versus West Indies, and the line and the lyric was, and we have to face Sri Lanka as well. That was the only mention they gave of them. 12 years later, Sri Lanka won the World Cup. Bangladesh hasn't had that same kind of acceleration. So that's the thing that we're going to look for Bangladesh in the coming years. Can they take that next step? Because they've got the love for cricket, they've got the population base to do it.
Well, that's an interesting point. David, would you have done the same if you were in Alan Donald's shoes?
I think you had much choice, Sunil. When you go out and criticise the skipper publicly, you've got to face the music. He faced the music. He was invited to speak to the board. My understanding is that the contract was terminated by mutual agreement. I mean, it's no big loss for Bangladesh because Alan Donald, fearsome fast bowler that he was for South Africa for so many years, has proved to be a very ordinary bowling coach. He's not yet succeeded in a role. In fact, he was the number 2 bowling coach at Kent in the county championship.
Interesting.
So he didn't even have a county bowling contract. Courtney Walsh was a much better bowling coach for Sri Lanka. I'm not just trying to get a West Indies player into the mix. The bowlers improved under him. The bowling has deteriorated under Alan Donald. And, because what does it take to make a bowling coach? Yes, you have to be able to bowl yourself. But, you also need some qualities, some, empathy, understanding of the players. And I think on that level, Alan Donald has shown himself to be lacking. I mean, those comments were very ill-judged to make them in public. Whatever you felt about that incident, there's plenty on both sides. I'm talking about the Angelo Matthews timed out dismissal. But you can't fire shots across the bow of your own team.
which, talking about mediocre, almost average coaches, which other coach that comes to your mind which was absolutely mediocre in the current World Cup?
Well, I think there's a battle here. There's a couple of others who are rivaling Alan Don. I mean, Alan Don didn't have the ultimate responsibility for the side, but Chris Silverwood has had responsibility for Sri Lanka. And we discussed yesterday that actually Afghanistan have become the second team in Asia behind India. They've edged ahead of both Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, both of whom have enjoyed considerable success in the past. Let's not forget Sri Lanka won the World Cup, and Bangladesh have been a formidable one-day international side for many years now, but they've not shown up in this tournament. So questions have to be asked about Chris Silverwood. He's the only one left in the hierarchy. All the other Sri Lankans have disappeared. And don't forget this news story yesterday that Sri Lanka have been suspended by the ICC for allowing government intrusion into the administration, management and selection of the team. And the ICC have fired a shot across the bows there and given a warning to Sri Lanka to put their house in order. The other coach, I have to put to contend for the wooden spoon, has to be the anonymous Matthew Mott. We haven't seen too much of him during this tournament. He hasn't fronted up to the press, to the media. And when you do get an occasional shot of him on TV in the dugout, he looks bewildered. I mean, he really does. It doesn't look like he's had any grip on the team. And I think he has to share the culpability for England's abysmal performance in this tournament.
Abysmal performance. Paul, do you want to step in and defend your countrymen?
Well, one thing I will say is that up until now, David has been very happy to sledge Matthew Mott by calling him Michael Mott. I'm pleased that David's actually now giving him condescending to give him his actual correct first name. But yeah, look, it's hard to defend him. He is the reigning World T20 champion that he got with England, but ultimately this has been an utter debacle, this World Cup from England. And as much as I want to defend my fellow Australian, and as much as he may well go on in future to have other successful coaching appointments, it is hard to see him surviving this. And England has a bit of a football-style culture where they like to sack pretty quickly. So I'd be surprised if he survives very long in the coming days.
Well, interesting story that developed last night. It's about the ICC actually dismantling the Sri Lankan Cricket Board. Well, we've got some updates on that, but David, do you want to just talk about the headlines so that we can get in the quick details and the finer print in the next couple of minutes?
Well, it's fairly extraordinary this for the ICC to go so far as to suspend Sri Lanka. I mean, what it means in terms of their ability to play their matches and tour England next year. They're scheduled to go to England to play 3 test matches. Who knows? They're saying get your house in order because obviously the government intervened directly to replace the director of cricket there. And he was then subsequently reinstated, but the damage had been done. It's clear to see. And if you ask any Sri Lankan fan, and there are many fantastic Sri Lankan cricket fans out there, they will say, when you ask them, what's gone wrong with Sri Lankan cricket? One word keeps cropping up, and that's politics. And we all know that if you get too much politics interfering in the running of cricket, it's trouble. Pakistan have had that problem over many, many years. There is a code of conduct whereby teams have to be free of government interference to run their own affairs, and clearly that is not the case. And if you have that sort of turmoil off the field, is it any wonder that performances have been so poor? Flipping it round, you could say it's the poor performances that have got the government of Sri Lanka interested, because cricket's very important to them.
Absolutely.
It's important to their status, it's important to their sense of well-being, it's important for tourism, it's important for their sense of sporting advancement.
Absolutely. So,
and for a team that's,
here was the story. Sri Lanka could not do very well in this entire tournament. So, as a matter of fact, the sports minister called in the 1973 rule in Act, and they said, according to that rule, you were disallowing and dismantling the entire cricket system in Sri Lanka, and therefore they put in one person in charge. However, ICC did not like the act. So yesterday in the meeting in Ahmedabad over Zoom, they decided that they will get Sri Lanka out. Now, the actual thing will happen on the 21st of November when the real meeting happens in person in Ahmedabad after the World Cup, and this is what it looks like. So actually the problem starts from the fact that the boards are not controlled by the government, but they are controlled by the ICC, is the mother body of the sporting federation. So here, and they give them annual grants. Now those annual grants are used to develop the cricket stadium infrastructure and create the talent pool so that the ICC championships and the level of cricket goes ahead. And when it goes ahead, it goes on to the Asian Games, the Commonwealth Games, as we saw a couple of years ago, and now the Olympics as it is going there into 2028. So this is what we are looking at. Jasmine, you have something to talk about it, thus?
Yeah, definitely. Just to interrupt your guys' conversation, Adam Zampa has just struck, getting rid of Linton Das, who seemed to be the man to currently be getting things away with for Bangladesh. He's gone for 36, just off 45 balls. And right now, Bangladesh find themselves 106 runs for the loss of 2 in 16.4 overs. 102
in 16 overs. Not that bad. What do you think of it, Paul?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's exposing a concern that Australia has, that we have not been taking wickets in the power play. And that's something I'm very worried about going in the match against South Africa, that if we have the same situation there where South Africa are allowed to build their innings and then explode towards the end, they may score too many for Australia. Mitchell Starc, and especially Starc, hasn't been quite on song in the tournament today. He's rested today. Ricky Ponting's quite eager for Marcus Stoinis to get a bowl earlier on to see if he can swing the ball a little bit. But at the moment, our main wicket-taking option seems to be Adam Zampa in those early overs. So Josh Hazlewood has been very, very economical, but I'd say that, along with the weakness in our middle-order batting, which still exists, those are the two big concerns that I have going into the semi.
What about the English game I'm talking about? David, your views. How about the English game today?
Well, amazingly, England are favourites with the bookmakers in the UK to win this match. I can't see that. Surely Pakistan, they do have an outside statistical freak chance of making this tournament, making the semi-finals. If they score 400 today and restrict England to less than 112, it could happen. For Pakistan, surely you have to believe that it can.
Well,
so
just to respectfully interrupt you here, David, before this World Cup, we never thought, when you see the statistics on your screen right now, we did not think a team winning by 302 runs margin, and we did not expect a freak inning which Maxwell played. I think it was more like a script writing for a screenplay for a movie. So I think everything can happen here in cricket. Go ahead, make your point.
No, that's right. I look forward to seeing your first screenplay, Sunil. I would really strongly recommend that you write that, because we've seen so many storylines appearing in this World Cup already, improbable ones. So, yeah, why not believe this? Pakistan have been improving throughout the tournament after a poor start. And while England could take some succor, I suppose, from the fact that Ben Stokes got a century in the last match, but their problems remain. And, Pakistan have shown themselves to have a superior position in the tournament to England. They are above them in the table. So I would say that Pakistan have a very good chance of winning this match today. England playing for pride, playing for their future contracts. Well, we know what the contracts are because they've already been issued. The question is how many people will be around to fulfill them. Joe Root, Johnny Bairstow, Moeen Ali, Adil Rashid. These are all players who've been there with Jos Buttler since the last World Cup. Don't forget, those of us with short memories, England were World Cup champions in the last World Cup. So to go from first to last, or second to last, is unacceptable, isn't it? And yes, Matthew Mott, thanks Paul for picking me up on that. At least I got his surname right. And he has been invisible. Yes, he did take them to a T20 World Cup, but he inherited a World Cup winning side and he's moved them from first to last. How can you, if I was an England administrator and the administration has changed in England, government haven't been involved. God, can you imagine Boris Johnson getting involved? Oh, he's not here anymore. We've had so many prime ministers. We've had more prime ministers than Bangladesh have had captains. And Shakib Al Sad's missing today from the game against Australia. No, I can't see the coach or the captain surviving for too long. Paul made the comparison with football. Those football managers are replaced so quickly. England usually take a bit more time before the executioner comes. They'll probably have
David, I'm going to stop you here. What we had on our screen right now is the leading batters, slide of the leading batters, and it looks very abysmal that you don't even find an English name there. Does it bother you as well? Because individual performances are different from a team game. I mean, at least you can have, considering that New Zealand, Netherlands, and you have once in a while Pakistani name finishing in that. Are you concerned about that?
It is a concern. I mean, if you pick of the batsmen,
because you can't put just the blame on the coach. The players have to stand up and be counted. Do you believe that as well?
Yes, you have to, but I still think the coach creates the conditions for the players to play. Oh, I would share the blame with Joss Buttler, the captain. I mean, he hasn't shown any particular flair for captaincy. You can't remember a single thing he says in the post-match interviews. It's always the same thing. You know, we can't put our finger on what's gone wrong. We all feel good. The spirit's good in the dressing room. Yes, but you keep losing. And it's your job to put your finger on what's wrong. You know, contrast that with the coaches that have been successful. Got to hand it to Andrew McDonald for Australia. And you've got to say that Jonathan Trott in Afghanistan has stood head and shoulders out as the coach that has improved the side. That's what a coach is there to do, to improve the team's performances, not to head up a massive decline, as we've seen from Matthew Mott.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll be going back to a good job in Australian domestic cricket before too long, which is probably the level that he succeeds at. I mean, England had a coach a while ago.
I think this is unfair sledging on Paul, who's just being very kind and ever smiling. Paul, you want to retort before we end up the show with the score?
Well, as I've said before, Matthew Mott's credentials were impeccable. He made the Australian women's team the best side in world sport, and he made the English side win the World Cup. I agree with David. He did inherit the side, a very, very good side, and the Australian women's team are a fantastic side who would have done well no matter who coached them. So, look, I think we're just going to have to see what happens with Mott from here on in. Let's see what happens in his next appointment. Maybe in a couple of years we can assess how he goes, assuming that he does get the boot from England.
Absolutely. Before we join at 5:30 India time for another round off, who do you think is your favourite apart from Australia? Is a foregone conclusion, or are you still worried?
I think I'm worried because eventually Australia's hoodoo over South Africa has to come to an end. And I have this horrible feeling that this could be the time. And I've enjoyed so much with all my South African friends. Anytime sport is brought up, that we can just straight away pivot to cricket, and they get very silent very quickly. I'm nervous that maybe the time has come for them to actually win a semi-final against Australia.
Well, absolutely. And who's your favourite for the evening show?
Today, I think hopefully Pakistan can do what David said, bat first, make a massive score, and put some pressure on England and make some New Zealanders a little bit nervous. And I still am enticed by the prospect of an India-Pakistan semi-final, as absolutely unlikely as that is. It has happened twice in this World Cup, as you hinted at, Sunil, that margins of that victory of that size have happened twice in this World Cup. So anything's possible. What we don't want to see is England win the toss and bowl first and themselves bat first, because then that basically means that Pakistan can't get over the line. So my tip for tonight is Pakistan, and my tip for the overall World Cup though is still India.
Absolutely. And before we wrap the show, Tasveen, what do we have the latest before we end up the show?
Currently, Bangladesh is sitting on 114 for the loss of 2 still in 20 overs. Just one consolation on that leading batting run scorer situation. You have Rassie van der Dussen coming in place of where Dawid Malan was. And then, just for David's happiness, Ibrahim Zaldran has just broken into the top 10, finding himself at number 10 on that top 10 batting ranking.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.